Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful afternoon. And it's another little bit of a slow day for basketball yet again. So for another time, we're going to be doing another list of the NBA teams if I was a fan of them, depending on their division. So now we're going to be doing the Southeastern division, and there's a couple of interesting teams there, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about that, and then in the second segment, I'm going to talk about the WNBA and Caitlin Clark breaking the 3-point record that the 3-point rookie record that was set like 2 years ago. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that and my opinions on that. And then in the third segment, I'm going to talk about T-Mac, Tracy McGrady, and he recently made a list of who he thinks the top 5 scorers in NBA history are. So I'm just going to go ahead and look over that list and talk a little bit about that, give my opinions on that, say what I think. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to talk about some basketball news that's surrounding the NBA. And, this is going to it could be free agent signings, it could be just hot takes, some things that are like being said, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll talk all about that in the fourth segment, mainly probably Lonnie Walker and his signing with the Boston Celtics. And then in the fifth segment, same as before, I'm going to be talking about a player who I feel doesn't deserve to win an MVP in a specific year. So, I did it last time with Charles Barkley and how I feel Michael Jordan deserved to win the MVP over him, and I'm gonna do it again with somebody else. And we are still in the 90s, so I might think that MJ deserves the MVP over some of these players, but I'll go ahead and reveal exactly what that fifth segment is going to be after the fourth segment. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love hearing from what you guys have to say. Whether you have a hot take, a burning question, something you've been wanting to share, we're all ears. The show is about keeping the conversation lively. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then you can go ahead and use Super Chat. Just hit the $ below the chat box or send in your message. It's guaranteed to get featured on the show. It's a great way to support our channel. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and send in your comment and donation that way. And either or would really help the show. So with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and go into this first segment where I talk about these Southeastern Division teams and where exactly they stand going into this next season, what they did last season, and where I feel like they could, where they might need to improve, and what exactly I would think if I was a fan of these teams. So the Southeastern Division is obviously going to be full of teams in the Eastern Conference, and the teams are the Orlando Magic, the Miami Heat, and the Atlanta Hawks, as well as the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards. So this is so far this has been one of the weaker divisions that I've done. Not many there's only 2 teams that made the postseason in this entire division, and both of those teams ended up losing in the first round. So it's not really a very successful division in the NBA, but that doesn't mean that the teams don't have the potential to become even more dangerous, especially as the years move on, given how young, especially the first team that I'm about to mention. So, the Orlando Magic, they ended last season as the 5th seed. They were a first round exit, and they but like really nobody expected them to actually like even be in the postseason, let alone be able to play up to 7 games in the postseason. So I'm sure like if I was an Orlando Magic fan, I'd be feeling really good about this lineup again, and I really want to run it back. I think that the lineup is going to return back better than ever. They just signed KCP. They expect the young players are expected to develop, and it's a very very young team, and they have a lot to be excited about in this next season alone. So imagine just how much better they'll be for the future. So the Magic, they aren't a top tier team of the conference, like how, the Knicks, the Celtics, and the 76ers are most likely going to be in the Eastern Conference. But they are a threat against every single one of those teams. So, they might not be a big name in the Eastern Conference like the previous teams that I mentioned, but they could still, upset either one of those teams in the postseason if one of the teams that I mentioned gives them a chance. Like, it's not like Orlando is just going to roll over and accept the loss quietly. Similar to this very next team that I'm talking about right now, the Miami Heat. So, when the Miami Heat, when they have Jimmy Butler, they are like in the argument every single time for being one of the best teams in the postseason. And it's like Jimmy Butler in the postseason is a legend. His performances are legendary, and his his style of play, everybody really likes it. Everybody really likes Jimmy, and most of the time, whenever he's healthy in the postseason, the Miami Heat have and find success. But in this year, he was not in the postseason, and unfortunately, the Heat were only able to win 1 game in the entire postseason, and they lost in the first round as the 8th seed. And really, if I was a fan of the Miami Heat, I mean, I'd be like, okay, we didn't have Jimmy, so we just have to like wait another year for him to be in the postseason. But now I'd be a little bit more scared considering the fact that Jimmy Butler still hasn't re-signed with the Miami Heat. So it's starting to look like this is going to be the last year for Jimmy Butler, which is something that I wouldn't want to happen if I was a Miami Heat fan. Like, I'd want I'd want the Miami Heat to do everything they possibly could to re-sign Jimmy Butler, give him however much money he wants, and that would ensure him to sort of, stay on the roster. And once again, like, aside from that, the Heat, they're basically running it back. Seemingly, it's going to be another year of relying on Jimmy and his heroics and the Heat culture to hang with the rest of the players in the Eastern Conference. Now, like, most of the time, I mean, you could argue that it's like, back and forth with the Celtics. Miami beats them, Celtics beat them, Miami ends up beating them, and the Celtics beat them. And it's a little bit of a cycle that they go through. So maybe you might want to argue that the Heat end up beating the Celtics in this go round as opposed to the previous one. But who knows, again, what their ceiling could be. It's all dependent on how well Jimmy Butler plays in the postseason. They are primarily known as a postseason team, so it's like, what they do in the regular season doesn't really matter to a lot of people. So, the postseason is really where this team is supposed to shine. But this team, however, used to be one of the most feared teams in the postseason, with Trae Young and his Atlanta Hawks being able to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals in that 1 year. I believe it was 2021. He made it to the he made it to the conference finals before Luka, by the way. But ever since then, ever since that season, he hasn't really found that much success in the postseason. And, I mean, you could argue that his series, I mean, again, like, the only really good series that he had was against the Knicks in the first round when Julius Randle was their best player. And it's like, I mean, this Atlanta Hawks team with Trae Young and DeJounte has been rather mid, and it's like, you know, you can't be mid when you have a duo as talented as those two, in my opinion. And they are a 10th seeded team. They lost in the play-in, and they're led by a great, fantastic player, but they're just like an army of just mediocre players. So it's like, I mean, most of the success they get comes from Trae Young, and he needs to be surrounded by competent role players if they really want to have some sort of chance in winning. So, I mean, they got to try it again now. They have to, there's obviously going to be an upside in being able to use their number one pick to the best of their ability. So they have to hope that he lands, and they already have their player picked, but they just have to hope that he develops into the player that they're hoping he can be, the best kind of player that he can be. So it's like, once that happens, then it should make your title odds and, like, you know, your success at going for a title all that easier. So now we have two of the bottom feeding teams in the Eastern Conference. We have the Charlotte Hornets, and they are the 13th seed in the entire NBA. They were terrible in last season. They were they were so bad. They were less than good last year. They were less than good the year before that. It's just been a train wreck. And really, the one good thing that they have going for them for their future, in my opinion, is LaMelo Ball. Like, the Ball brother, the Ball boy, he is a fantastic player. And really, the one problem with him is that he keeps getting injured. He keeps getting these ankle injuries, and they affect him in the worst possible way. He gets them at the worst possible times as well. And he's very young for the team. Like, he's still a very young guard, but the fact that he keeps getting injured this much is just like, you know, it's shaving off more years that you could get from him. And he's the team looks capable and competitive on paper, but they haven't really been in the playoff conversation for a very long time. And it's like, you know, if they can get into the play-in conversation with the team they have now, then that's a pretty good start. But hopefully, like, you know, their 6th overall pick ends up landing as well, and he ends up performing to the best of his ability, and he becomes the best player he could be. But, you know, we have to wait and see just how well that develops. And then in the final team on this list is the number 14th seed, the Washington Wizards. They they have not been a competing team for a while, ever since they lost John Wall and Bradley Beal. And so they have 3 first-round rookies, and there's no real pressure for the... Hold on just one second. There we go. There's no real pressure for the Wizards to really, I guess, play well in this season. They have no expectations, really. Like, if you're gonna ask anyone what they think of the Wizards, they're gonna think that, okay, they don't really deserve this, they don't really deserve that, they don't need to do this or that. And it's like, there's no pressure to win. They can prioritize their development, and they can try tanking for Cooper Flagg, and they also, it's not like they have any bad players on the team. They do have Kyle Kuzma. They could end up trading Kyle Kuzma to develop some really good value for the team. But those are what I think that's what I think of all the all the teams and the situations that are surrounding these teams. So I'll be right back after this short break, and I'll be talking about the most recent WNBA record that was broken by surprise, Caitlin Clark. And I'll also be talking about the Rookie of the Year race for the WNBA. So I'll be right back after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, I'm going to be talking about Caitlin Clark breaking another WNBA record in her recent outing last night, or actually a couple of nights ago now that I think about it. But again, like, she is a phenomenal player. I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about her achievements and exactly what she did. And I mentioned a couple nights ago because she did break the rookie record for the Fever before, but now she broke the rookie record for the entirety of the WNBA. But before I go ahead and continue with this segment, I do want to remind everybody that we do love to hear from what you guys have to say, whether you have a burning question, whether you have a hot take, or something that you've been dying to share. We are all ears. The show is about keeping the conversation lively, making sure your voice is a part of the mix. If you really want your comments or question to get noticed, just hit the $ below the chat box. Send in your you can send in your super chats, and your message is going to be guaranteed to get featured on the show. And if super chat isn't really your thing, like if that's not a thing that you really like doing, then you can always go ahead and use the link in the displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, and that link is GSMCpodcast.net, and that really helps the show as well. That also, again, it makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, let me just go ahead and pull up this slide real quick. We can go ahead and talk about Caitlin Clark breaking the 3-point record for the WNBA. Now, Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal WNBA athlete. Wherever women's basketball goes, wherever that news comes from, she's most likely going to be the centerpiece of it all. And she's been arguably the best rookie in the entire draft class. And aside from Angel Reese, there's nobody else that's really even comes close when you talk about just overall skill, overall talent, and overall popularity on a WNBA basketball court. And Angel Reese recently she's been playing very good as well. She recently had, I believe, 3 games where she ended with 20 rebounds or more, which is fantastic. And what makes it even more crazy is how Caitlin is still getting more attention than Angel, and Caitlin is like well ahead of the Rookie of the Year race compared to Angel. So it's like, Caitlin is so far ahead in that debate. Like, Angel isn't even a part of the debate anymore. It's really just a matter of when Caitlin is going to win the Rookie of the Year and if she's going to win it unanimously. Like, the question of her winning it now is just a matter of time. So, Caitlin, with this record, she has made over 86 three-pointers in her first season in the WNBA. That is more than the recent number one three-point shooting season by a rookie, which was set at 85 in 2022 to the number 1 overall pick, Ryan Howard. And now, some might argue that maybe the WNBA season was how should I say? Maybe it was the season back then was shortened, but the recent record set by Ryan Howard was broken in 34 regular season games, but Caitlin Clark ended up breaking this record after playing 31 regular season games. So she made three three-pointers in the 84-80 win over Connecticut on Wednesday. And it should also be pointed out that ever since, I believe, Diana Taurasi ended up talking down about Caitlin, saying that the WNBA is going to be a rude awakening for her, she has won in practically every single matchup against Diana. And that just, aside from her mental fortitude, what doesn't she have? Like, what doesn't Caitlin Clark have? And now, on the Fever ended up, now Caitlin Clark is leading the league in three-pointers with 88, which is one ahead of Kayla McBride after this previous game, according to this article. However, Caitlin Clark is shooting 33% from beyond the three-point line in comparison to Kayla McBride, who is shooting 42%. And other veterans, such as Stephanie Dawson, who shoots 48% from the three-point line, which is ridiculous. Jesus, 48% from three is insane. But Clark has also been able to make 37% of her three-pointers since the 36% of her three-pointers since the Olympic break, and the Fever have a 4-1 record in the span of her shooting the ball this well. The Fever are overall, they're 15-16, and they're one game behind Phoenix for the 6th place in the entire WNBA, in the standings. And they also have a tiebreaker in hand, just in case if they need one. Now, in addition to the three-pointers, Clark also leads the league in total assists and, unfortunately, turnovers. Obviously, when you're passing the ball as much as she does, getting those assists, chances are you're turning the ball over just as much. And she already has the single season, she is the single season holder for in turnovers. So it's she has the record for the most turnovers in a single season, and is on pace to break the assist mark for this 1 year alone. And the 3-point record will be more challenging to break than any of those other records. Now, Clark has to connect on about 4.6 of her three-pointers in her final 9 games in order to tie Sabrina Ionescu's record of 128 3-pointers made last season. So, Caitlin is going to have to hit a lot of 3-pointers if she wants to break another record. And if she ends up breaking that record that Sabrina set, God forbid, the league would not be able to handle it. And then we'd be able to see Caitlin Clark in the postseason, which was something that wasn't really looking all that likely in the beginning of the season. If you remember in the beginning of the season, the Fever, they were super, super, super bad. I think they were 1-6 at one point, and they've recently turned that around. They've been a far better team than what they were in the beginning of the year, where it seemed like Caitlin was the only player on the team, sad but true. And now it seems like she has a lot more help in a lot of these games that I've watched. It seems like despite the adversity, now the rest of the players, they're responding to the moment a lot better, and it's not just Caitlin Clark out there doing the most of the work. And when you have that, I believe you have a team that's ready to compete and against the best teams in the WNBA, because it's they're the biggest obstacle in the postseason for, I think, every single team in the entire WNBA is going to be going up against the Liberty. And they have a fantastic team. They have Brianna Stewart. They have Sabrina Ionescu. They have they just have great talent overall over there. And that's probably going to be the team that they need to beat that's probably going to be the team that a lot of teams actually need to focus on beating in the postseason, because they are probably going to get people very, very upset, and they're really going to really, really give people a run for their money in these postseasons. But that's basically it for the WNBA talk. Again, this is a record that it's never been touched before. Not that it hasn't ever been touched before, but it's another record that Caitlin easily broke in her first year. And it's what can't she do at this point? She's already leading the entire WNBA in 2 different categories. And it's that's just a fantastic feat to, have under your arsenal. Even though you might not be entirely efficient, it doesn't matter. You are producing the most 3-pointers in the entire WNBA, as well as being able to produce the most assists in the WNBA. The assist part is probably the most impressive part of her entire sort of I guess you could say statistical accolades that she's accumulating throughout her career. Because let's face it, getting assists is hard enough, especially when you're put in a, I've said it before, my stance on the team is going to be the exact same. When your team isn't really all that good and you're still able to rack up as many assists as she does, it's you're really doing what it takes to make your team better. And really, how could you not like that in one of your best players? You know what I'm saying? You would love for that to be a quality that your draft pick has, or your rookie player that you just acquired has. And that's the impact that they're bringing day in and day out in every single game. Because it's let's face it, she's getting all the attention that she's getting from all these fans for a reason. But anyways, aside from that, we are out of time for this second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about T-Mac and his list of the best scorers in the NBA. In the history of the NBA. So I'm just going to be talking about that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm going to be talking about T-Mac's list of the best scorers in the history of NBA basketball. This is his list, and he had it in a specific order. So it goes in its top 5. So it goes like the order is going to be in from the best to the worst on this entire list. So hold on just one second. There we go. And T-Mac, obviously, T-Mac, he's a fantastic player. He's one of those players that a lot of people believe was robbed due to a career full of injuries. And a lot of people think that if injuries never happened to somebody like T-Mac, he would be a player that is sitting on not only numerous championships, but also numerous accolades in the NBA, because he would have had a much longer career, and he could have been a much better player had injuries not had he not succumbed to his injuries in a rather early stage, I guess you could say. And so, he was if you want to talk about one of the league's best scorers in the NBA, then T-Mac is probably going to come up in a lot of people's, in a lot of conversations with a lot of people, because T-Mac was a phenomenal scorer when he was on the Orlando Magic. More so on the Magic than when he was on the Houston Rockets. However, on Houston, he did end up scoring that ridiculous 13 points in like 11 seconds or something like that. And he obviously, you have to be a phenomenal scorer to be able to do that. And to have his opinion on the scoring list, you would usually think that they have some say in these kinds of conversations, because not only have they most likely played some of these players, but they also they can talk the talk. It's not like they're just talking out of just from what they see with their eyes. Like, they're talking about what they see up close, because it's most of the players on these lists he's played against, and it would make sense how he would have some players like that on the list, and how he might not have several other players on the list that you would consider them over these players. Because this list right here, in my opinion, it's not really the best top 5 scoring list you could make. And especially for somebody who's as smart and as as intelligent in the basketball world as T-Mac. So Michael Jordan is number 1, which is not a problem. I don't have a problem if you have Michael Jordan at number 1. Kobe Bryant is second on this list, and that makes complete sense why Kobe Bryant would be so high on his list, and why he would also even be on his list. Kobe is arguably one of the league's best scorers. Aside from Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, Kobe had the best performance by the best scoring performance by any NBA player. And in the modern NBA, it's by far one of the best scoring performances that the league has ever seen. And not to mention, Tracy McGrady has always held Kobe to high regard, and Kobe has always held Tracy McGrady to a high regard because they both see each other as very competent scorers and very competent basketball players. Like, to Kobe, T-Mac was essentially him, except much taller. And Kobe felt that T-Mac had a better advantage in every single category and in every single department because of, T-Mac was able to utilize his height so well. And so despite that, T-Mac still had tremendous respect for Kobe and everything that Kobe has been able to do. But so that's the reason why he is ranked second on this list. Next is Carmelo Anthony, who is probably, in my opinion, the most controversial one on this entire list. Then he put himself, which makes complete sense. And then he put Kevin Durant directly after that. And again, it's rather controversial because it's like, if you're going to put Kevin Durant on the list, then you got to put him ahead of yourself. I'm sorry to say, but that's how it works. And don't even get me started with Carmelo Anthony. I love Carmelo. He's a great player. Excuse me. He had a great time on the Knicks, and he's obviously, in the conversation as being one of the best Knicks in the history of basketball. If Jalen Brunson doesn't quickly steal that highlight from him. But Melo as one of the league's best scorers, I don't think so, because Melo, while he was a phenomenal scorer, he wasn't a very efficient scorer most of the time. Now, Melo, he only had 1 year, I believe, where he was leading the entire NBA in points per game. And that's for somebody who is known for being just a pure scorer, leading your being able to only get one scoring title in your entire career it doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. Kevin Durant, he's considered a scorer, but he has 4 scoring titles, right? And who else does he have on this list? Kobe Bryant. He's considered a scorer. He has 2. That's still more than 1. And obviously, Michael Jordan, one of the best scorers ever. He's won several in a row. He's had a set where he's won 3 in a row, and then he had a ridiculous streak from 1987 all the way down to 1993, where he won 7 in a row. And it's there's just you have the scoring titles, but Melo, he only has 1 scoring title. And not only that, it's not even it was really an efficient scoring season. It wasn't it wasn't like any of Michael Jordan's scoring seasons where he was shooting 50% from the field. Melo was shooting rather poorly from the field, honestly. If you want to be honest and look at the numbers that Melo was averaging in that year, he was only shooting 44% from the field, and he was shooting 37% from 3, which was a little bit impressive, I guess, but he was also shooting from inside the arc. He was shooting 47% from 2, which was way worse than his field goal percentage, which is a little bit, it's kind of surprising, honestly. But that just goes to show you the kind of shots that he takes, the kind of mid-ranges that he leans on, and things like that. And it's again, you would rather him take different kinds of shots than the shots that he takes. And I would also much rather somebody else on this list as opposed to Carmelo Anthony. And I don't understand why people are so afraid of putting LeBron James in these best scoring lists, because it's like, if you want to put Carmelo Anthony on this list, you can easily put LeBron on there. I mean, LeBron has as many scoring titles in his career as Carmelo Anthony does in his career, and one gets considered in scoring titles more than the other just because one is considered holds the title of scorer. I don't really understand that logic. I also don't understand this list because, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this list. I mean, do you agree with this list? Do you think that T-Mac is making some sense? Would you rather see somebody else on this list? Because, I didn't even mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who should be a player that should be, considered on this list. And it's like, I understand a lot of people don't really think Kareem has a lot of skill to be considered on this list, but Kareem, he did hold the scoring title before LeBron James for the longest time, and it was considered, before LeBron, it was considered to be an award that was completely unbreakable, and a lot of people would have him as one of the best scorers because not only was he able to hold the scoring record for so long, he did it primarily taking two-pointers. And not only that, Wilt Chamberlain is also another one of these players that should probably be on this list, but isn't on this list. But, aside from it, that would probably be what I would amend if if I was looking at this list. I would amend Carmelo Anthony with LeBron. I would amend Tracy McGrady with Kareem, and I would amend Kevin Durant or Kobe Bryant with Wilt Chamberlain, one of the two. And I would change the order of how the scoring goes, but I think Michael Jordan is probably going to be number one on my list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And if you guys think there's a better list than that, there are better scorers out there, drop them below in the comment section. But I'm going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I talk about Lonnie Walker getting traded to the Celtics, because that's right now is the biggest story going on in the basketball world. So I'll be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to be talking about some basketball news that's going on, some, free agency talks, and the season, is getting closer. So just going to talk about some of the big topics that are going around in the NBA right now as we speak. And for starters, Lonnie Walker has recently been a potential player that the Celtics are going to acquire in this offseason. So it was mentioned yesterday that there could be room for another guard on the Celtics roster, and that Brad Stevens has done making a contract, an Exhibit 10 contract for Lonnie Walker. And the deal is going to give the Celtics the ability to see how Lonnie Walker fits on the Celtics roster in training camp during a during the entire duration of training camp before guaranteeing him money for the season. So a lot of people consider this a very solid move for the Boston Celtics because Lonnie Walker was one of the only bright sides in all of Brooklyn for a short while, and he was also one of the biggest upsides in LA for a short while as well. Like he wasn't like, he wasn't one of those winning players, but he was one of those players that came off the bench and provided impact once you desperately needed it. And a lot of people can find a lot of use for that in an offense. Recently, in this last season that he played, he wasn't a starter, but he averaged 9 points per game, was able to get 2 rebounds, and averaged 1.3 assists as well, while also being able to shoot 38% from 3. And 42% from the field is kind of gross, but you can clean that up a little bit and shoot the ball a little bit better. But that 38% from 3, that is a very, very interesting percentage to shoot from, and honestly one of his better shooting percentages that he's had for the longest time. And at the clip that he's shooting them at, that is a very, very good percentage, because he's shooting 4.7 3-pointers a game and he's making about 2 of them. So very, very nice percentage for shooting from there. And really, like, overall, like, if we're going to talk about like him fitting in the Celtics roster, the Celtics, they have a lot of like really tall and really like, lanky forwards and guards that are roughly around 6'7", 6'6", and maybe even 6'8". And I think somebody like Lonnie Walker, being 6'4", fits the category rather well. And he plays the shooting guard position, and he's probably not going to get as many minutes as the starters are going to get, but I wouldn't be surprised if they sort of bring him in the rotation as one of their leading units coming off of the bench. And it's not like the team is a stranger in creating stars out of guards that are 6'4". The Celtics are indeed responsible for the development of Derek White, and there is a possibility that Lonnie Walker could be the next person up there in taking that mantle. But again, we have no idea how it's going to work. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the Celtics acquiring Lonnie Walker. I think maybe as he'd be a very great player to have coming off as a rotation player, like maybe when Drew Holiday is thinking of sitting down, or maybe when Derek White is thinking of sitting down, mainly because of how I know Lonnie Walker's, like, his game is more like how do I describe his game? Like, how do I compare it? I don't think I can really compare it to anyone, but I will say he does have a lot of he does play defense, and he also has a pretty decent handle of the ball. I do want to say he has a decent handle of the ball, but his at least from what I remember of the last season, like, I just remember him shooting the ball a lot. So I would think that pairing him up with Drew Holiday would be a much better choice. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of Lonnie Walker and who you would want to pair him up with in the Celtics rotation. And really, that's all I have in regards to some of the basketball news going around in the media today. So I'm going to go ahead and go into a short break, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and talk about a player who won the MVP in a specific year, who I feel like didn't really deserve to win that MVP over another player. Be sure to tune into that 5th segment to figure out exactly which player I'm going to be talking about. So I will be right back, and be sure to tune in. Apologize for that. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And before I go into the player who I feel like doesn't deserve the MVP, there is some news that I do want to mention that I completely, for some reason, just did not include in the last segment. And Steph Curry recently signed a 1-year, $62.6 million contract with the Golden State Warriors. And this extension is going to keep him under contract with the Warriors through the 2026 and 2027 NBA season. And this is according to Woj. And so, the Warriors are gonna have Steph under contract for 1 more year. So it's gonna be interesting to see exactly where and what team he's going to end up on. So I just wanted to, touch on that. I might do another segment on that, talking a little bit deeper about this deal tomorrow. But again, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this. Do you guys think this is a good thing for the do you think this is a good thing for the Warriors? Do you think this is a bad thing, or do you think that it's it'll be like I guess maybe like a neutral thing for both teams? But let me know what you guys think in the comments about both of those about those moves, and we'll go ahead and continue with our regularly scheduled fifth segment, which is going to be talking about a player who I feel like didn't deserve to win an MVP. So we're still in the 90s, but for the sake of talking like being, I guess you could say, consistent in like the time frame and when each MVP happened, like I want to do it like in the order of the MVPs that they came in. And the reason why I'm doing this is because that I feel like in both of the years that this player won the MVP, I don't think he should have won it in either of the years. And I think the same player should have won the MVP in both of the years. Yes, the same player that I'm talking about is Michael Jordan. I think he should have won the MVP. And the player who I'm talking about is, of course, Magic Johnson. Now, Magic, he ended up winning an MVP in 1989 and in 1990. So those were the 2 years that Magic Johnson ended up winning the MVP after, or I guess you could say where I think he doesn't deserve it, because Magic Johnson did end up winning a regular season MVP award. He retired with 3 of those. So he ended up winning another MVP in 1987, but I have no problem with him winning the MVP in that year. But when you look at Magic's career going into 1989, a lot of people see the 5 championships that he was able to grab during that time, but a lot of people were also able to see how Magic, despite the fact that he had 5 titles, only had 1 MVP to display his dominance, right? And towards the end of his career, like towards the latter half of his really long and great NBA career, like the prime of his career, I should say, like towards the end of it, because like Magic Johnson, the best years of Magic, you could argue it was from when he started all the way down to 1991, right? And heck, you could even argue that maybe his best year was it wasn't even like it ended in 1990. You could argue that like that's exactly when his prime ended. But again, the way that the MVP voting and the way that it was constructed and the way that it worked, some might argue a little bit differently. But anyways, you looked at Magic in with his career, and he has ridiculous he has a lot of postseasons, and he has a lot of postseason wins. He has a lot of postseason rings. He has a lot of finals MVPs, but he doesn't have a lot of regular season MVPs. And it seemed like towards the end of his career that most of the voters sort of, it seemed like most of the voters were trying to force Magic's way into winning as many MVPs, if not more MVPs than than Larry Bird did in his career. Remember, Larry Bird won 3 MVPs, so it only makes sense that Larry and Magic end up their careers having the same amount of MVPs. It's only poetic that they do that. So, but in this specific year, in 1989, there's no real reason for Magic to win the award over somebody like Michael Jordan. Like Magic Johnson, he averaged a ridiculous 23, 8, and 13 per game. He had the advantages in the assists, and he also had the advantages in team record, but Michael Jordan had the advantages in everything else, averaging 33 points per game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and as well as shooting 53% from the field. And, his advanced numbers completely destroy Magic Johnson's. And it's like if I were to give the vote to anybody in that year, I would give it to Michael Jordan. Because, let's face it, in 1989, we all know that Michael Jordan was the best player in the NBA. Not to mention, I didn't even mention that he was almost averaging almost 3 steals in that year as well. He was averaging 2.9 steals per game, which is basically 3. And while his 3-point percentage wasn't all there in the 1989 postseason, not postseason, but in the 1989 regular season, it wasn't all there in the previous years either. And in the last season in 1988, he ended up winning the MVP, and he was shooting 13% from 3. So, excuse me. But it's not really a problem, mind you. It's just I'm just nitpicking here a little bit. And if you were paying attention, then you would have noticed that I mentioned that Magic ended up before 1989, Magic ended up having only 1 MVP, and he needed to get the same as Larry. And if you paid attention, I said Larry had 3 MVPs. So that would mean that between 1989 and between Magic retired, so 92, something like that, Magic would have had to win 1 more MVP. So he ended up winning back-to-back MVPs, and he won in 1989, and then he won in 1990. And it's basically the same story, where it was the last MVP that Magic needed to tie Larry in total MVPs. And, in order to tie him, they just needed to have him there to sort of, they needed to have him there to win the award again. And Magic, again, he held the advantages in team record and in assists, but Michael Jordan, once again, dominated everywhere else. It was basically the exact same story from what it was last season. Magic averaged 22 points, 12 assists, and 6 rebounds, but Michael Jordan averaged 34 points, 6 assists, and 7 rebounds as well. So it's the numbers are close to the same. The story is close to the same. It's more or less just a repeat of the previous year. And really, the big difference is just how the voting took place as well. Because the crazy part about it is that in 1990, Michael Jordan wasn't even second place in the MVP voting. No, he ended up getting third place, despite averaging 34, 6, and 7. And Charles Barkley ended up getting the MVP. Not the MVP, but he ended up getting the most first place votes in the MVP race, but somehow ended up getting second place. So this MVP was literally just given to Magic to tie Larry Bird, because Charles, technically, he should have won the MVP because he ended up getting the most first place votes. This is the first and only time in the history of the NBA where an MVP, an MVP caliber player, ended up getting the most first place votes, but didn't end up winning. And it's kind of ridiculous how that happened. And it's also kind of ridiculous how it happened to Barkley. Of course it happened to Barkley. That's one less MVP that he has to talk about. But I mean, that's what can you do as an NBA player? But that's all that I have today on this podcast. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this segment. Do you guys think that the voting was wrong in both of those years? Would you rather see Charles Barkley win an MVP? Would you rather see Michael Jordan win the MVP? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And we do love to hear what you guys have to say for the show. And if you really want your comment or question to get mentioned, then you can use Super Chat and just click the $sign below the chat box. Send in your message. It's guaranteed to get featured on the show. It's a great way to support our channel. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can always go ahead and use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. Either or, it really helps the show. And thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast today. And I am your host, Nelson, and I'm going to be here once again tomorrow, same time at 12:30 to do the segment once again. So I'll see you guys until then. So take care and have a good one.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.